Every farm has a story. When it comes to dairy farming, these stories are often only heard by the animals raised, the land stewarded, and the family that makes it all possible. Join me, Dairy Gal Val, as I interview individuals from across the dairy industry, both within the United States and across the globe, discussing topics like farm management, the food industry, ag business and technology, and most importantly, their farm story. This is the Dairy Hour Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Dairy Hour Podcast. I am your host, Dairy Gal Val. This episode is brought to you by Bobasing, an independent employee-owned company that is focused on providing herd management solutions through their easy-to-use software by streamlining and simplifying the daily process for a more profitable operation. For more info, go to bobasync.com. So I am joined here today with Miss Gabby Emery from the UK. Gabby, how are you?
I'm really well, thanks, Val. Yeah, really good. Thank you. Thanks so
Good.
much for having me on.
I'm very excited to chat with you today. I got to meet Gabby along with a bunch of other great young people in ag, specifically dairy, back in October at the IDF World Dairy Summit in Chicago. So Gabby is one of those fantastic people that I got to meet and got to chat with a bit. We stayed in touch and she thankfully agreed to come on here and chat with everyone. So Gabby, let's start out by telling us a little bit about yourself.
So I am 27 years old. I live in the southwest of England, so I am from a place called Somerset. So I actually grew up at the top of Cheddar Gorge, which is where they, of course, make cheddar cheese. We were farming there, not dairy farming, but yeah, that's where I originate from, and I haven't ventured too far away. So I work
Hold on.
for
Can I just stop you there? There is a place called Cheddar Gorge.
yeah. So Cheddar Gorge is where cheddar cheese comes from.
That is amazing. Did not
I
ever
actually
realize that.
I didn't realize that people wouldn't realize that until I came to the summit, and that was just something I say, oh, I'm from Cheddar, and people were like, oh, I did not know that was a place. So yeah,
And it
yeah,
must be a
absolutely.
heavenly place.
It is, yeah. To be honest, there's not a massive amount of cheese made in cheddar anymore, but I am still in a hugely dairy dense area, and we do make a lot of cheese in Somerset. So yeah, I can still say that that's all going on. But I work for the UK, so the England's National Farmers Union. So we are a membership organisation representing 55,000 farmers across England. And essentially, I work within dairy and also bovine tuberculosis policy. So I work as an advisor and support our members within those two areas. So bit of a split role, but naturally enough, sort of covers similar areas of working. And yeah, it's a hugely varied and interesting job. And it of course encompasses that which I love, which is cows. I'm just mad about cows, and that's really as complicated or as uncomplicated as it is, really, Val.
So the organization that you are working for, are they just like a group of farmers from the UK, or is that like the milk company? I guess I'm not super familiar with that organization.
So essentially, yeah, we're a membership organisation. So farmers subscribe to a membership with us. So, like I say, we've got sort of about 55,000 farmers that we represent, of which we have somewhere in the region of well, there's just under 8,000 dairy farms in the UK, and we would have the majority of those as members. Certainly it'd be a very small percentage that's outside of our membership base. So yeah, like I say, we're a membership driven organization, so really voicing the that of our members, and carrying that forward into sort of policy lobbying,
Okay.
and yeah.
So
Mm.
you're similar to what we would have in the United States known as the Farm Bureau.
Yes, yeah,
Okay, perfect.
absolutely. Yeah,
Now that the
yeah.
comparison's been made, it's much easier to grasp. Um, there's just so many different types of organizations. I was trying to kind of figure out which type of organization it actually, a membership based, but it's all farmers, not just dairy farmers. And
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
okay,
yeah. So dairy would be a good chunk, a good percentage, but yeah, we'd represent yeah, livestock, so beef and lamb, dairy, horticulture, combinable crops, yeah, the list goes on. So anybody that's farming in
excellent.
the UK, in the UK and England, I suppose.
And how many years have you worked there?
So I've been here about 18 months.
Okay.
So yeah, not a massively long time period. But yeah, it's flown by. So yeah, previously was working within the dairy beef integrated supply chain actually. So that's kind of really where I hail from and what we farm at home.
Okay. So I guess yeah, let's head back to your childhood in Cheddar Gorge because that's just the best thing to say. So do you want to talk about how you were where you were raised and what kind of things your parents did, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So my mum and dad were farming in partnership for many years, and they started out their journey in pig farming. So we were outdoor pig farming back through the sort of late 80s into the 90s and early 2000s. And yeah, we had some 500 outdoor sows, and the area that we were farming in was hugely challenging in terms of climate. It was a bit like farming World War III because the ground was so very wet. It was hugely just a very sort of clayey ground. So I don't know why my parents chose to farm pigs where they did, but they did. And they had a team of staff working with them, and that was really my base, my kind of grounding was all pigs, and then sort of late 90s we sort of started to move away from the outdoor sows and into indoor weaners, and we then sort of started taking on the management of, or I say we, I was a young child at this time, but my parents took on
Hey,
the
you were
management
tagging
of.
along for the ride.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was in the passenger seat of that Land Rover doing, yeah, all the feeds. But we, yes, we took on management of a number of indoor pig units. So I think between my mum and dad come sort of about 2005, they were just the two of them, and they got rid of the staff at that time, and they were farming about 6,000 indoor pigs, which was quite a lot really at the time. I mean, you say that
That,
now and it's just nothing.
I don't know, that still
But
seems like a lot of pigs to me.
yeah, but I mean, it was across, that was across about four farms. So
Okay.
it's like I say, it's just changed so massively in 20 years in such a short space of time. In the UK, you'd look at easily 10,000 pigs. It would be really average on one unit. So yeah, that was what we were up to, and that was a case of everything was either managed, so sort of farm management situation, or through rented units. So it was then sort of into 2000, late noughties, so 2007 8, that my parents decided to buy some land, a greenfield site, and really start building their dream, because they'd never owned anything, first generation farmers, and wanted to have something to call their own, and potentially to pass down to, it was just myself and my brother, who have both always been interested in farming. My brother more so. I really grew up as a pony club child, so horses, ponies, pony mad. That
So
was born through.
is is your brother older or younger than you?
He's older, yeah, so he's
Older.
3 years older.
Okay.
But what was really nice about our upbringing was that neither of us were forced into farming. Yes, absolutely, we grew up on a farm, and that was, what we knew, but we always both were really aware that we could go out and do whatever we wanted in the world, and that didn't mean that we had to come back and come home farming. Both my mum and my dad made it really clear that we were to go out and do whatever fulfilled us, whatever really brought us happiness. That was what we needed to go out and do. And interestingly, we both did, and actually came back to farming in later years. So that was really nice. And for me, it was horses. Yeah, like I say, I was just on a pony the whole time. So really had very, very kind of limited interaction with the actual sort of day-to-day running of the farm as a young child. And then, like I say, we moved into dairy beef back in 2008 it would have been. So bought this greenfield site, built a shed. We had planning permission. We bought the ground for one building, put that up, and it was basically a decision of we'd either do calves, we'd be calf rearing, or we'd have sheep. And my dad hated sheep, so the decision was made. We went into calf rearing, and at the time we were basically just buying calves from the local livestock market and bringing them in batches as best we could. The shed would hold sort of 160, and we were looking to take them through from, they were coming sort of directly from the dairy farms at 2 to 4 weeks of age.
So you were buying you were buying like young bull calves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
so primarily that was exactly what it was at the time. We're only looking sort of 15 years ago, but sex semen was just not, people didn't touch it here at that time. And there was an awful lot of dairy bull calves, but then also Angus's, the native breeds as well, Angus's and Herefords. So we were sort of I suppose probably 60 or 70% dairy bulls, and then the rest made up in native crosses. But yeah, so we were taking them from that sort of 2 to 4 weeks of age through to about 5 months, so sort of 160, 170 kilos, and we were then selling them on to finishing farms, and from there my mum and dad built the business, and we're now operating on that home farm, and we have an off farm about 2 miles down the road, and basically full capacity we'd have about 1,500 dairy beef calves at any one time. Same system, so come in at the same age and go out at the same sort of similar ages and weight, but we now do it on contract for integrated supply chains. So we've got a couple of integrators here that buy calves from dairy farmers. They pay the dairy farmer, and then they tend to retain ownership of the cattle through the supply chain, just for kind of risk limitation from their side, to be able to forecast what they've got returning through the abattoir. But yeah, we then contract rear essentially for a couple of supply chains. So yeah, that's really kind of what's happened through my sort of 27 years of home farming. I was farming at home full time for not an awful long time, but essentially my mum and dad ran the business, and my mum really unfortunately passed away in 2015. She had a terminal illness, motor neurone disease. I think you guys call it what is it you call it? I want to say Lou Gehrig, but maybe that's not
yes.
it. Is it?
It might be, yeah.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
One of those that you just I was sort of 15 or 16 when my mum was diagnosed, and you just think like your whole family's invincible, the people you love, you don't ever think you'll lose. But yeah, unfortunately she passed away 2 years after she was diagnosed, and it was a case that my dad really sort of looked at the business and looked what mum and himself had built, and said that to my brother and I, well, look, you don't have to come back, you don't have to be involved, but if you're not interested, then we'll sell it, because dad had looked at what had happened with my mum over the last 2 years and thought, well, actually, life is too short to be doing something. And,
Yeah.
you know, he'd have been slogging his heart out if he was going to be doing it on his own. But my brother and I thought, okay, well, you know, we'll give it a go. My brother was actually away working on a dairy farm not too far from home, but I was working in the equine industry. So yeah, came back, and it was, I mean, it was a time that we all needed to be together anyway, naturally enough. But it worked. It actually worked very well. It was either going to be hit or miss. It was it's gonna work really well, or we were going to fall out big time.
The dynamics will be there, or they will not be there.
Family farming. I always say the best thing about working with family is best thing about working with family is family, and the worst thing about working with family is family.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah, we really actually, well, in that time we took on the second unit, and yeah, it flew really, and it was just the three of us, and we did get on really well. And like I say, it was probably a time that we all needed to spend together. But just as life would happen, the supply chain that we were producing for, actually, the managing director came around, and I was farming the offsite myself. I was 18 years old, and I felt chuffed with, you know, my 300 cattle over there, and was really proud of the unit. And he actually offered me a job. He said, well, he spoke to my dad first, but he said, you know, would you like to come and work for me for a year? And I thought, you know what, it would probably be a really great opportunity just to get something else on my CV. To not work for your dad forever would probably be a positive. So I had this vision of going away for 12 months. My dad and I are very similar. That's something I should probably stress, is the fact that everyone will know it when they, you know, if they're working in family businesses, that there'll be similar characters. My dad and I are those, and we didn't, yeah, if we were clashing, we were really clashing. So we thought, you know what, probably a good time. So yeah, I took this role, and I went out, and I was really just buying calves from farms locally. So I was driving up farm drives and knocking on doors and cold calling, and, you know, buying farms directly for the supply chain, rather than farmers, you know, having to drive to market and, you know, take a whole day out to take the calf to the auction. It was actually just a case of sort of bringing that service to them, which was, you know, that's the best part of kind of 7 or 8 years ago now, and there wasn't so much of it going on then. So yeah, it started out there, and then some 6 years later, I'd gone through a number of different roles, but ended up really kind of working in account management of kind of food service and retail contracts, and sort of working in sort of livestock development, which was hugely exciting. So yeah, I mean, I've really sort of wound up best part of 10 years in industry now that I really didn't see coming. I thought I was going to go and ride horses forever, but like I say, I do think that that is the beauty of not having been forced into something, because, you know, no one ever means to force their children into a business. No one ever means to sort of channel them down a certain route. But sometimes I do think that, you know, children, particularly farm children, sort of see the business that their parents have built and feel that, oh, you know, I have to take it on, it's the expectation. And although actually that may happen anyway, I think that pressure can be a lot sometimes. So yeah, like I said, I still kind of go back and do a bit at home, weekends and things, with my dad and my brother. They've got one other that works there now with them, but I definitely do think that there is a benefit to me being away for a time, sort of getting a bit of industry experience. So yeah, that's a bit of a roundup.
Awesome. So started at pigs, went to ponies, and then onto dairy beef.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the journey.
That's great. So here's a question. As a child, I do not like pigs. They're very cute when they're little. I don't like them when they're big. I like to eat them. That's about it. Do you like pigs, or having them when you were little, do you not like pigs?
I love pigs. In all
Ah,
honesty, if it wasn't for probably the sort of lifestyle comparison. So growing up, pig farming, I knew that it's not so much the case these days, but it stank. It wasn't the smell that was so much of an issue for me. It was kind of the quality of life, in terms of, I used to see mum and dad come in, and they'd been in dark sheds all day and dusty, and like I say, buildings and infrastructure has changed massively, which is fantastic.
Oh, definitely.
But it just put me off, because I just thought, do you know what? I like being out in the open air, and that doesn't really align. But in terms of pigs themselves, I love them. They are such intelligent creatures. They are so, so clever. And that just always makes for, I think, just huge intrigue and interest for me. Cattle are not half as clever, as we all know. I love cattle. They are honestly my passion through and through, but their intelligence comparatively is just not there. But I think, for me, like I say, I really do like pigs. I don't particularly eat that much pork, because there again, all farmers will be able to relate to this. We always had a pig in the freezer. My God, did we eat some pork? So it's one of those that, when I go to a restaurant, and actually I always think of my mother, because when I go to a restaurant and I see belly pork on the menu, I always think of my mother saying, that's the cheapest cut of the pig and they're charging the most. It's funny how these things stay with you, isn't it?
That is funny. So we have a very close family friend who is actually a local butcher, and he'll butcher some steers every once in a while, but for the most part he's butchering pigs. And he's so funny. If he goes to a restaurant, 9 times out of 10 he will order the pork chops, which I just think is so funny, because of the way that he butchers so many pigs, but then he goes out and he still eats pork chops. So
it's fairly impressive, yeah, because
you
can put yourself off these things. I've got a friend of mine who's been goat farming for years and years, and she would not touch goat milk or goat cheese with a barge pole. Not because it's a case of, oh, I know how that's produced. She well knows the welfare and the standards on her farm are, as with many scenarios, utmost. However, she's like, the smell. I smell that all day, every day. I don't because I don't know if anybody else thinks this, but I definitely do think with goat milk and goat cheese, if you've ever farmed goats or been near farmed goats, there's a definite similarity. But having said that, I love goat cheese, so that's
I can see it. As someone I've had goats my whole life. I've always had at least a few goats, and I do like goat cheese, but I find that we have different like some places it quote unquote is more goatier than others. So I can see that, and I tend to obviously not go for the goatier of the goat cheese.
It's so interesting, isn't it, how you just become you become very astute to these things.
And if you've ever had goat cheese, or a lot about goat cheese, you know what I mean when I say it's goatier than
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone knows what I'm talking about. But actually there's this one that we've been getting. It's a soft goat cheese, but it's actually vanilla blueberry.
Oh wow.
And it is delicious.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, because goat cheese just goes so fantastically with like real fresh flavors. So
yes,
yeah, that's
and even that sweet, oh gosh, it's like a dessert goat cheese, but it's
gonna need to get some of that imported over here.
Yes. So another something that just kind of crossed my mind, with our catering business, we sometimes get this caramelized onion cheddar, and it is called Pickwick.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I think I want to say that's produced over here. Don't
it
quote
is.
Me on it, but it's coming. Yeah, I'm just trying to think where that comes from. But that's, I mean, yeah, in terms of the cheddar that we'd be producing over here, that we have so many different flavors.
Yes.
And it is just, I mean, I guess the thing is, I'm going to be biased and say, of course, we invented it. We invented cheddar. I'm really not that. I think people will probably listen to this and think, oh my gosh, she's so incredibly passionate about the fact she's from Cheddar. I
That's
really are.
okay.
I didn't make the connection myself. It was a colleague of mine that said, you work in dairy and you're from Cheddar. I was like, oh yeah, I kind of, because we were farming pigs. I never really took any notice.
We were
Yeah,
farming
so
pigs in Cheddar.
yeah, I've just looked it up because I was thinking, I'm sure that's local. Like I say, we produce a lot of cheese in the southwest, and this is from about 35 minutes down the road from me.
Ah, very cool. See,
Isn't that mad?
so this is my mom had gotten it one day because I work very closely with my mom in the catering business that we have. And well, caramelized onion anything is normally delicious. So she
Absolutely.
saw it and got it and we ate it. And now it's like one of the staples on our charcuterie boards that we do.
Oh,
Um,
phenomenal.
even though, so our milk goes into a co-op and we are known in the United States for our cheddar. So, um, so it's funny because like our normal cheddar that we're using is cheddar that comes from Cabot, which is our cooperative that we're a part of. But we always have that caramelized onion cheddar from England on the charcuterie boards, and
it's like blasphemy, that really.
it isn't. We embrace all types of cheese, and it is
Absolutely. Do you
so
know what?
delicious.
Rightly so, because can you imagine a world without cheese, Val? I actually don't
No,
want to think about it. I don't want
that
to
would
think
be a
about
very terrible world to live in.
it, wouldn't it? Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. But yeah,
Yep.
love
So
it.
that's neat to know that it's close to you. Now, I mean, I think that this means that in the future I'm going to have to come visit and
Oh,
then go to
100%.
Cheddar
Yeah,
and do all the things
yeah.
because
Come and see some dairy beef calves as well, because yeah, we've got a few.
we've got just a couple. It's fine. We do on our dairy farm, we do raise our bull calves up into dairy steers. We finish them and sell them finished, or we'll actually get them processed and sell them processed. So we do a lot of the dairy beef,
Amazing.
uh, a lot of dairy beef here as
And
well.
would that be commonplace in the States in terms of taking non-replacements through to finishing on farm of origin? So with the dairy, would that
Um,
be
a lot of people do it, but a lot of times your dairy farm is not the one. It's becoming more and more common. I mean, probably 6 or 7 years ago, it was very much not a common thing.
Mhm.
And now that people with just such low margins in the dairy industry, people are trying to find that other way to bring in some extra income. And they're finding that they can take those steers, you know, they're born on the farm, they can raise them up and feed them cheaper than they can, they can make more money on them that way rather than just selling them as calves to basically another person that would raise them for beef.
Absolutely. We always say over here, and when I say we, I'm kind of speaking on behalf of, I suppose, probably integrators and the dairy beef side, but it it is fairly common knowledge that the biggest margin to be made out of non-replacement stock from the dairy, whether that be beef cross or your dairy bull calves, is retaining them on the dairy farm. So for the dairy farmer, in terms of whether he, as you've just rightly said, he or she were to market that calf as a 2-week-old animal, market it as a reared animal, a store, or a finished dead weight into the abattoir, it is actually to keep it on farm, because it's one of those that essentially you remove all of that unnecessary cost in terms of movements, in terms of anybody kind of middlemen, auctioneers and all that sort of thing. Yeah, there's always the most margin to be made, and actually it's the most productive, because as you say, you're keeping them on farm, so you're reducing the stresses, you're reducing those points of check where they would ordinarily get on a lorry and be taken 3 hours down the road, and all of a sudden you've lost out on a week's worth of growth, because cattle don't really like being moved. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's definitely gaining traction here as well, like you say, and it's that kind of additional income stream that really sort of attracts people, I suppose.
definitely. We raise them right. I mean, we raise them right alongside of our heifer calves. and we just steer them when they become old enough to castrate them, and they stay right in with our heifers that are growing, and basically go through the process. And then when our heifers are gonna become pregnant, they'll do that, and we'll actually move our steers into more of a finishing pen, and they get finished and head into the supply chain, which is, it works really well, and it's definitely a great extra income. And we know that our beef steers are responsibly raised here on our farm. We give them the best life possible, and they taste delicious when it's all over. So
absolutely.
it
And
makes it,
you're dead right there, Val, in terms of the fact that you've got the beauty of it is you've got the infrastructure. The system is already there. You're doing
yeah,
it with your heifers. So, it's just a case of whether you've got that room. And I do understand that the massive challenge here with our dairy farmers is that
definitely.
don't often have the room. But in terms of kind of, looking forward to the future, yeah, it's definitely an area of interest. So
Yeah, definitely. So I guess I don't know what kind of fun facts you have on the UK dairy industry. I don't know if you have anything fun and unique, or something that you noticed is really different when you visited Chicago and got to talk to other dairy farmers from around the world. What kind of fun facts can you bring us?
oh, that's yeah, I probably should have had a thought about this before.
Oh, you're good.
But so I suppose, our dairy industry is fairly small in comparison to yours. We've got, yeah, like I say, sort of some just under 8,000 dairy farms here. So we have somewhere in the region of an average herd size of around 140, something like that.
Okay.
And we, I suppose, I don't know about fun fact, but what we do over here is, hugely different to what you guys do, because a large amount of our dairy herd would be grazed for, a good proportion of the year. And it's just so interesting to see the sort of varied systems, of course, because it's fairly commonplace here, of course, for that kind of grazing management to take place, whereas for you guys everything is kind of there, and it's where everything is, and it's right in front of you because it's in the sheds. But I mean, what percentage of your dairy would be grazed? Because is it fairly low, or have I got the
I believe that yeah, I'm gonna say it's a lot lower than the UK. Hold on, we're gonna do a little quick Google search here. So I think that your average herd size is much smaller than ours
Yeah,
as
I would
well.
imagine that we would be sort of hundreds of head smaller in terms of our average herd size, because of course it takes into account, as averages do, takes into account everything. I think fairly standard commonplace would be a kind of 200 cow dairies here,
Yeah,
which are primarily those sort of sized areas would largely be kind of family run, and then of course we go up into the up and over 500 into thousands, and you largely have kind of management structures in place there, really. So, but go on, tell me, what's your average herd
yeah.
size?
Okay, so it says, and I guess this data that I have found is pretty old, but I'm guessing it's probably fairly similar. Primarily, the ones that are pastured primarily for their forage is only around 3% or less of the dairy herd in the United
Yeah, that's
States.
really interesting. That's really
But around 20% um, of the dairy herd has some type of pasture access, but they're not relying on that pasture access for primary food sources.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So I think just to now, I honestly, my sources and my memory could be failing me here, so please nobody hold me
oh,
to
you're
task
good.
over this. But from memory, I think we're operating around sort of it would be less than 10% that would be on what we call zero grazing. So, literally none of the herd would be grazed. So, we're really looking sort of up and over that sort of 90% mark.
So it's almost backwards, or it's not backwards.
It's completely flipped.
Flipped. There you go. Backwards is not
exactly
the right term. But it's just completely different.
It is, because what we do very well here is grow grass. You look at, in terms of what you guys are doing with your tillage and your your crops, we don't have the potential to do that here. We have an awful lot of ground that we can do nothing but put to pasture, and that's the beauty of cattle, as we well know, that we can actually graze them, whether that be dairy or beef, and I guess it looks very scenic, and it's lovely, and I guess that's just a part of kind of our landscape, and I think that's just really kind of what struck me, and it's just, as you say, it's just how different nations and different countries do things, and it's just so interesting to see the sort of, and then how the management differs as well. But yeah, I'm really coming up stumped with the fun fact. I've failed you there, Val. I'm sorry.
You're not failing me. I kind of put you on the spot, so that's on me. But I mean, as far as like you're just under 8,000 farms in the UK, there's only 35,000 and 36,000 in the United States. But if you look at the obvious differences in geography and just how much bigger the United States is, the percentage seems like it would be pretty similar. So if you were to make the UK the size of the United States, I think it would hold its own. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, definitely. Dairy plays such a massive role in the UK in terms of sort of what it does in terms of its role within the wider economy, particularly our rural economies, as as any farming businesses do, how they filtrate out through those different industries and different sectors, and they really provide a real lifeline in some of our rural communities, because you've got the obvious things like employment, but it's all that sort of secondary sort of contracting and business that is being pulled into this one operation, which has so many, it's a spider web of, as I say, any business is the same, but we do have a lot of kind of those rural communities that are very quite sort of isolated, and I think dairy is unique like that, because if you were to look to beef, or sheep, or crops, it is different in the fact that they're much more sort of stand on their own 2 feet, so to speak, and they don't have that sort of reliance on external business. But yeah, I think that's something that I always find really fascinating about dairy as a sector. That it supports so much further outside of its own remit.
Agreed. And that runs true in the United States as well. I think a lot of people, even in the communities with the dairy farms, don't realize what a contributing factor that dairy farms are to their community, whether it be economic, social, and just all of the different factors of having a dairy farm in your neighborhood it's pretty neat. It also keeps space green, which is excellent in my book. So
yeah, absolutely. And people don't always appreciate that, actually, is that without that dairy farm there, that ground would not look like that.
Yes, 100%.
Definitely.
And so what kind of products is the UK producing as far as dairy? You said that cheddar is from the UK. What other kinds of cheeses are they known for? Do they have a big showing in, just your regular fluid milk, yogurt? What other products are popular?
So we produce yeah, an awful lot of liquid milk, yogurt, kefir as well.
Yep.
You guys are quite hot on that as well. And yeah, so we have a number of cheeses. I believe, are you actually catching up with Ruth Grice at some stage?
Yes.
You honestly, she's your woman when
Oh,
it
I
comes
cannot
to,
wait. I
yeah,
stay
when it comes
tuned,
to,
audience, because Ruth's milk co-op that she ships her milk to actually makes one of my favorite cheeses. So stay tuned for a future episode for that one.
So yeah, I won't delve too much into that, but yeah, our blue cheeses are, you know, fairly renowned. Yeah, Stilton but being well up there. But yeah, it's hugely diverse. I think, you know, same as yourselves, you know, we produce an awful lot of incredibly nutritious products that you know, really create a huge part of people's diets, that people don't always actually think about how many times a day they rely on dairy, because it's in so many different things, and it's in terms of its nutritional benefit just incredible. You know, nutrient per calorie is when you look at it, absolutely fascinating in comparison to, you know, a number of other products. And, you know, I certainly wouldn't be bashing any alternatives, but, you know, that there is no argument when it comes to the nutritional, you know, like I say, the nutritional benefit of
Agreed.
dairy. So
Agreed. So, man, this has been such a fun conversation. I just have to come visit you, I've decided.
100%, you've got to come over. We'll have cheese, there'll be carbs, there'll be, what else can I offer?
I'm here for it. That's fine with me. So you mentioned that you have done some traveling before this started. We were chatting a little bit about traveling. Favorite place that you've ever visited?
Oh, there's a good one. So I spent some time, I lived in the Republic of Ireland, so the south, and I loved it. Very similar to the UK, very similar to England specifically, but also quite similar to New Zealand. New Zealand get an awful lot more sun, but for anyone listening, you can sort of relate it to the New Zealand landscape. So that was a definite favourite for me. But in terms of kind of traveling further afield, Italy, within
Ooh.
Europe, Italy's a bit, yeah, definitely top of the list. And as I was saying, went out to Australia back in 2020, pre-COVID. Before that, brought me back home, and yeah, I travelled the East Coast, a classic travel story for yeah, a bit of a sabbatical, but it was, you know, fantastic. And as I was saying earlier, I just think travel is so hugely important for kind of exposing yourself to so many different elements of the world. I yeah, big fan, and would love to do plenty more. And to come over to Chicago earlier in the year was just brilliant. Of course, we spent a large amount of time, of course, in a conferencing center, but did get out to some farms, which is brilliant. There was no better feeling. I'm sure there are many people out there the same. You're probably exactly the same as me, Val, in terms of being in that conferencing center was amazing, and I learned so much. My head felt like it's going to explode, but the moment my feet touched the farm, I got out and I smelled cows. I just thought, I just like had this like breathe sigh of
Yes.
relief.
Back home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it was fantastic to get out and see some cattle. But I did come over to the States last year, and I have to say, top of my list above everything else, Nashville.
Ah,
Yeah, honestly, I'm a lover of country music, and we have a festival here in the UK called Glastonbury. There again, I'm biased. I live about 3 miles north of the Glastonbury Festival site. I love it. However, I said, having visited Nashville, that if Glastonbury was a place, it would be Glastonbury is a place, for anyone who does know that. Glastonbury is a very small town, very local to where the festival is. However, if it were a place like Nashville, it would be Nashville, because the people, I mean, in terms of Americans in general, you guys are so very welcoming, and just make everybody feel very at home. But Nashville was fantastic, and would love to get back there. Broadway, amazing.
So I mean, I'm probably, oh gosh, I'm not even sure how many miles away from Nashville I am, up in New York State, but I get to visit Nashville for the first time this coming February, so I'm really excited about that.
Amazing. I'd imagine for you guys, country music is just like a part of general life, but we're not at all quite so on board over here. Recently, it's been really interesting actually, because I'd say in the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a massive turn of the tide, and people have taken a huge interest in country music. And all of your top guys and girls have been coming over here touring, and it's really picked up pace. So yeah, cowboy hats, cowboy boots. That is, if when I grow up, I'm going to be a cowboy. That's the dream. Okay, if I wasn't
that works. That works. Oh my gosh. When I grow up, she says. Oh, that's great.
Age 27. One day it'll happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in my mid-30s and I still say when I grow up, and I'm like, well, I kind of am grown up, but I just choose not to think that I am. So
I do know what it's that meant. Absolutely, it is that mentality that keeps us all young, and yes. I actually think life is far more interesting that way, because my gosh, it could be ever so boring if we were all very serious about adult life.
Yes. Well, I think back and I was like, man, when I was 16, 17, 18, 35 is like, man, you got your stuff, you got it together, like you figured it out. And now I'm 35 and I'm like
absolutely smashing it. Yep. You get there.
And now I'm like, man, I don't have my life together at 35. I just kind of do what I want and wing it, and it works well. And I'm having fun doing it most days.
Absolutely. And sometimes it really crosses my mind that I think, I must ask an adult about that. I'm 27. I
can ask myself.
Oh, brilliant. Love that.
Yes. Or you're like, man, I should ask permission to do this. And then you're like, wait, I'm an adult. I can just do this. I'm my own person.
That really comes into play when I'm doing the food shop and I see a cake and I think, do you know what? I can buy that.
I sure can buy that with my own money.
Yeah, my PT would probably say that I could do less of that. But anyway, look, it's all about the finer things in life, surely.
Hey, you're not living if you're not having fun. So have fun. Absolutely. And eat the cake.
Oh, 100%. Every time.
And then later, Gabby sends me an email with a cake. So I bought the
cake. You just know it.
Oh, gosh, that's amazing. Coffee or tea?
Oh, tea every day. I am honestly, we're within the right audience, but most people would look at how I drink my tea and want to pour it down the sink, because I have about half. People say, how much milk? Half a cow. I have half a cow in my tea. So when I say that, people never put enough milk in, and I've always been the same. And the only way to get people to make my tea right every time is I say, like a child's tea. And then they put enough milk in that it's cold enough that you can drink it straight away. Every time, people will never miss the mark if you say like a child's tea. But you do look at it and it looks like dishwater. So that's me and my tea.
So I do about the same thing with my coffee.
Love it.
So I'm there for you. I cannot drink it crazy hot. People that drink it like they'll get it from a restaurant or something and it's like so hot, and I'm like, how do you drink that? I have to add so much milk in it to make it so that I don't burn my tongue.
I think that's really interesting, because I think, having listened to you just say that, Val, that it could be born out of being busy farming, you know, being on the go and actually just needed to drink it straight away and not having time to be walking around with it in your hand and spilling half of it down your overalls.
Yes, or burning yourself, because that's
Yeah,
not ever
exactly.
fun. As an
No,
adult,
no,
I'm
no.
all for lots of milk in my coffee or tea, just so I don't burn myself,
Yeah,
because caution hot.
would agree.
As the adults would warn us, it could be hot. So, oh my gosh, that's great. And I guess one other question, fun question that I have for you, especially being from the UK and having, you know, different meals and things like that over there. What is your go-to comfort food?
Oh, go to comfort food. Well,
Or your
it's
all-time favorite meal?
fairly boring. Comfort food is cup of tea and a packet of custard cream biscuits. That's where we're at. That's the stage at life I'm at. But my all-time favorite meal is I'd probably have to go with a steak. I'm going for a
Okay.
steak, and I'm really easily pleased. A rump steak. Now I'd want to know where I'm purchasing said rump steak, what restaurant I'm in, because that will give me an indicator as to what sort of quality I'm looking at. But yeah, rump steak, chips, salad. Peas either. To be honest, I'm not fussy. I'm easily pleased. But I would eat my body weight in beef if I had half a chance.
Um, I am with you 100% on the beef thing. I never get sick of beef. Someone the other day, I was talking to someone and they were like, oh, yeah, you know, we maybe have beef like twice a month. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I wouldn't survive if I only ate beef twice a month. If I'm talking beef
I usually
like
am thinking
3 to 4 times a week,
there are times where I'm looking in the fridge and I'm thinking, Gabby, you can't have beef because you've already had it today.
nah, just eat the beef.
Just eat the beef.
If it was offered to
Absolutely.
me
So
7 days a week,
versatile.
I would eat it 7 days a week.
It's so
So,
versatile as well. Like how many different dishes could you get beef into? It's absolutely. Yeah, big fan.
I
Big
mean, I'm
fan.
fine with just steak. You don't even have to be creative with it. Just, I'd eat a steak every day. That's fine. I'm here for it.
That sounds like the dream.
See? We can be adults. We can eat steak every night.
My bank balance definitely wouldn't be thanking me.
Ah,
There again, my
we'll
dad's
be
always
okay.
got
Okay,
half
so
half
let's,
a cow in the freezer.
what's your favorite classic British dish?
Oh, um, bangers and mash.
So
So
what?
that's sausages and mashed potato. I think
Ah,
that's fairly British.
that,
Yeah, bangers and mash would be what we call that.
that's pretty British, I would say.
Yeah, and plenty of gravy. So yeah, that's like I say, I think that's fairly unique to us. I don't think there's many others doing that.
So this reminds me, we were talking earlier that I was in England back in 2005, and we visited, I have to say it like the fancy British say it, Bath.
Oh, well, you are honestly, your pronunciation of place names is
Oh, I'm
fantastic.
trying. I am
It's
trying hard.
amazing.
So, so one of the best things that I've ever eaten traveling the world is they had these like meat pies. Do you know what I'm
So,
talking about? What are they called?
or I mean, you're asking me, but in what format did you buy it? Did you buy it like a pastry from a
Oh, it
shop,
was
or
like
did
a
you eat it
hand,
as a meal?
it was like a street shop, like a food trucky kind of thing.
Oh, I'm so
Was
intrigued. I
like a
mean, like,
beef.
are we talking like a steak and ale pie or something? Like
No,
what?
it was
Like,
like a little hand pie. Like it was just like little, like handheld pie with beef and stuff in it, like beef and gravy. Is it like
I mean, I tell you,
a beef
it
paste
sounds like a
pasty?
pasty,
Pasty.
pasty, a
That's what it
pasty.
was. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, Cornwall. I am fairly south in terms of the geography of the UK, but below where I live is Cornwall, and the Cornish pasty is renowned.
Yep.
The Cornish, yeah. So the Cornish pasty store was probably where it came from.
So can I get those somewhat close to you when I come visit, because that's a priority?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we love a pasty over here, and
okay.
anything goes in a pasty as well. For anyone wondering, for anyone who's not heard of a pasty, you could put potato, you could put veg, you could put meat. I mean, you'd get things like yeah, I don't know, chili and chicken, or like chicken and chorizo. That's a great pasty. But people just chuck whatever in there, and it's it makes for a great time. It's like a whole meal in a pastry.
Yep. And I'm here for that. So now I really definitely have to come back and visit you, because that's where I'm at.
Perfect. We've got a whole list of
yes.
what we need to present when you arrive. So that's great.
The bucket list of what Val is going to do when she returns to the UK. All right.
Got it. Made note.
Gabby, do you have any platforms where if people want to follow along with your adventure that they can find you?
Yeah, so I am on Twitter and my handle is Gabby J Emery, and I'm also on LinkedIn, Gabby Emery. Yeah, so I actually don't. Do you have a handle on LinkedIn? I'm just trying to think.
I think I'm with you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm fairly easily found, I think, when you type in Gabby Emery. But I'm just trying to remember. Do you have like an @ Is there a handle for LinkedIn, or is it just you type in your name?
Just whatever name, yeah.
Yeah, so Gabby, Gabby. Everyone wants to spell it with an I and IE. I mean, it'd take a lot to offend me, but you won't find me. People have called me far worse, but
I love it.
That's me. So thank you so much. This has been such great fun. Thank you for having me.
So much fun. Thank you. And I will link her links to LinkedIn and Twitter in the show notes for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Dairy Hour podcast. Again, this episode is brought to you by Bovasync. Find them at bovasync.com or on social media at Bovasync as well. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Please be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and leave a review. You can find me on most social media platforms at Dairy Gal Val or online at dairygalval.com. Thank you so much for coming to the Dairy Hour.